Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by extending the sincere apologies of Commissioner Simpson for not being able to join you today. But I welcome this opportunity to address you, albeit virtually, to express a strong will for cooperation between the European Union and Australia. This event takes place against the backdrop of Russia's war in Ukraine, and it takes place against the backdrop of a climate crisis that expresses itself through floods, droughts, heat waves, and forest fires. Both of these crises, the war and the climate crisis, are a stark reminder of the urgency in investing in cleaner and local energy systems. Renewables like wind are critical. Europe responded to Russia's aggression and weaponization of energy by working closely with partners to impose sanctions and to support Ukraine. But as regards the energy system, we also responded by Repower EU, a plan for how to reduce our dependence on Russian energy. We do that through accelerating the deployment of renewable energy. We do that through lowering our consumption through energy savings and energy efficiency. And we have done that by securing fuels from other more reliable and international suppliers. And data shows that we are on the right path. 2022 was in fact a record year for renewables in Europe, with over 40% more wind and solar installed compared to the year before. And in Europe, the only place in the world, greenhouse gas emissions dropped by 2.5% in 2022, whereas globally greenhouse gas emissions rose by about 1%. Our aim for Europe is to be climate neutral by 2050, and this requires renewables and more renewables than we have now, like wind. We have just agreed on a target to have 42.5% of renewable energy in our energy mix by 2030, and that will require a doubling of the current share. So, with all of this considered, where does wind come in? And what is it we're doing to promote it? And how can the EU and Australia cooperate more closely on wind energy? These are the questions that I would like to briefly address today. First, earlier this year, the European member states all agreed on long-term goals for deploying offshore renewable energy in each of the 5 sea basins across the European Union. With all the figures combined, with all the commitments combined, the aim will be to install around 110 gigawatt of offshore renewable generation capacity by 2030. This is twice as much as originally planned when we discussed it in 2020, and it will then rise to 317 gigawatt by mid-century. And some of our member states are planning to go even further. As an example, the Netherlands earlier this year committed to almost doubling its 2030 offshore wind target to 21 gigawatt. This goes back to the North Sea Summit, which took place earlier this year, attended by European Commission President von der Leyen and Commissioner Simpson in Ostende, a Belgian coastal town. It brought together leaders of those countries that border the North Sea, Belgium, Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands, as well as the United Kingdom, France, Ireland, Norway and Luxembourg. These countries are committed to accelerating significantly the production of offshore wind in the North Sea, turning the North Sea into Europe's largest powerhouse. And they are committed to cooperating on energy transmission to get the electricity from offshore turbines to people's homes across Europe. And that brings me to the second question. What exactly is the European doing to promote wind energy? One of the important actions taken has been to reduce some of the regulatory barriers that otherwise hold back or delayed progress. For example, we are making permit granting procedures for renewables projects faster and much simpler. All renewable energy projects are now considered overriding public interest to allow for a faster administrative processing. And it will be possible for governments and public authorities to select priority areas for renewables. These areas will mean that projects can go ahead very fast and they can connect to the grid, of course still with due consideration for the environment and biodiversity. Grids is another top political priority. To deliver on the energy transition and the higher electrification in our systems, we have to prioritize modernization and investment in electricity grid networks. By 2030, we are going to need nearly €600 billion in investment to cover the needs of the electricity grids alone, both transmission and distribution. And by 2030, wind energy will be the largest generator of electricity in Europe, doubling its current share of the gross electricity generation. We're going to need it for powering both the existing uses and the newly electrified applications, and we're also going to be relying on wind energy to produce renewable hydrogen. This will be particularly important for sectors that are otherwise hard to decarbonise, like chemicals, heavy transport, so sectors where electrification is either not possible or too expensive. And we now have a framework in place to better plan and develop our grids through a reform of the electricity market design. We look at the energy demand, the potential for renewables, and the related technologies such as storage. With increasing shares of solar and wind in our energy mix, we need to make sure that demand and supply are matched. This requires both real-time data and real-time price signals that allow consumers, businesses, and smart energy appliances to respond to the needs of the electricity system. Next month, in early September, a high-level conference on the future of our grids will take place here in Brussels. Together with decision makers from both the public and private sector, we are going to be exploring how can we further accelerate and modernize grid deployment in Europe, making it more efficient. There are also significant changes in the global competitiveness as we look at increasing investment in clean technologies to underpin the global clean energy transition. And like Australia, we are keen to build healthy and secure supply chains with our partners. In this context, in March this year, Commission President von der Leyen announced a Net Zero Industry Act that aims to make Europe's clean tech industry more resilient, to scale up manufacturing of net zero technologies, and to make sure that the European Union is equipped for the clean energy transition. We in the European Union have a globally leading manufacturing base in wind technologies, producing the largest share of world's turbines, 26%. Maintaining a global lead, of course, requires us to have access to the key resources that are required to develop and manufacture clean technologies. And that's why we also have proposed a Critical Raw Materials Act, looking at how we in the European Union can diversify the sources of raw materials, working with close partners and trusted source countries. This should further increase the attractiveness of investing in clean technology manufacturing in Europe. And we will continue in that context to champion and work together with others for an open, rules-based trading system, also for energy, while ensuring clean tech manufacturing in Europe that can thrive in a stable and predictable investment and trading climate. And that brings me to the third and final question. What are the avenues that we have? How can we best cooperate between the European Union and Australia on wind energy? I know that we are not alone in seeing a bright future for wind power, onshore and offshore, and I know that Australia has significant potential in wind. And we would like to invest in Australian wind power. We very much welcome the progress that has been made in establishing the first offshore wind power zones, and we welcome Australia's participation in the Global Offshore Wind Alliance. It's not just about greening Australia's energy mix, it's also about the potential for exporting your energy to help the global transition and to expand trade and investment. This is happening in places like Pilbara, where the Asian Renewable Energy Hub will turn wind and solar energy into renewable hydrogen for the global clean energy transition. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that we will never go back to the position we found ourselves in prior to the 24th of February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. This is the past. Our future is renewables, and we will be counting on wind energy as we forge ahead towards a more secure, affordable, and clean energy system in the longer term, together with our partners. Thank you for your attention.